I ordered my new computer today, so hopefully my writing is going to increase soon. Any advice on planning a novel? I've got 20 chapters planned out and need maybe 10 to 20 more. It's so hard. Well, if you got 20 chapters planned out, you have a pretty good feel for the novel. It sounds like um, the key, I think, in a first draft is to just tell the story fearlessly. So don't be afraid of it being wrong. Don't be afraid of it getting off track. Don't be afraid of it not being perfect. Don't be afraid of it being the worst novel you've ever written. Hopefully, if you have a writing career, your first, second, third novels will not be the best that you ever write. So um, it's, I think, important to go in with just the idea of get the story down, get the words down, and then you need to be willing to do the work on the back end. The idea of coming in and doing the edits and making it perfect and that kind of thing. I also think it's good not to get yourself caught up in a million rewrites. So you reach a point once you've written a novel where you go into you rewrite and you rewrite and you edit, which I think is important. But you do reach a point eventually where you're not making the novel better, you're just making it different, and that's true of short stories and any length. The more and more you rewrite it, you can make improvements and you can make small improvements, but there comes a point where the overall quality is not increasing with every change that you make. So I would say if especially it seems like if you've got 20 chapters planned, that you're a good outliner, or that's where you're leaning toward in your story writing, which is fine. So use that outline and just kind of build from it as you play out the novels. Let the characters kind of fill up the space that feels natural. If it goes the wrong direction, you can always go back and make changes, and then just kind of work your way through chapter by chapter. And if you're a short story writer at all, for instance, I was writing a lot of short stories before I attempted my first novel. It's not a perfect analogy by any means, but one way to get through a novel is to imagine each chapter as sort of a mini short story that's maybe needs to stand on its own a little bit, but also has to be connected to the chapters before it and after it. I would say, as much as you can, avoid the transitional chapters. So don't just necessarily have a chapter with a character driving from point A to point B, and you have one chapter where something's happening in A, and one chapter where something's happening in B, and then you have this chapter in between where you're just kind of driving. Now, of course, dialogue can be important, so you can have characters working something out during that drive, but sometimes it's better to put that into the actual action. So to, kind of to shorten it up, as a lot of authors have said, just kind of skip the boring parts. You can also write a novel out of order. So if you have chapters that are standing out to you, you can write those out of order. That can get complex though, and you can kind of lose the narrative doing that. And you can also create scenes that don't necessarily fit later. Like once you've pieced the chapters together, you realize, okay, this chapter that I love so much that I wrote first, it's really chapter 18. It doesn't work anymore because the characters are different people now. So I guess in a lot of ways it's just easier to go linear, but it's okay to go forward and come back as you need to kind of figure out where you're going. To shorten it up, I would just say you definitely need to trust yourself. You need to go in fearless. You need to not let fear stop you where you're at chapter 5 and you can't ever get started on chapter 6 because you're not positive you got it right. Sometimes you just got to plow into it and let it happen. And especially if you're good at making an outline like that, you kind of have a framework for going in, and you can always improve it in the editing process, but you can't improve something you haven't written yet. So especially if it's like you've tried for years to get going on something and you haven't gotten it going, your best bet is just to power through it and get it down on paper, and then make your improvements, and just don't be afraid to get it wrong. Worst thing that happens is you put this novel together, it's pretty good, and it's not as good as the second, third, or fourth novel you make, and you kind of want that to be the case. You don't want your first novel to be great and everything to be downhill from that. So just be willing to go in there and make the best novel you can with who you are right now, and trust that every novel you write after this one will be better because you wrote this one. So I guess some of that's kind of rambling, but I hope it serves you pretty well putting it together. So good luck.